Dear colleagues, dear friends, I am glad to join the greetings addressed to the organizers, participants, and guests of the 16th Assembly of the Russian World. It is deeply symbolic that your forum traditionally takes place on the eve of National Unity Day, when we will celebrate the victory of our people in the fight against foreign invaders. On January 1st of this year, the Foreign Ministry became the sole founder of the Russian World Foundation. It is a great honor and responsibility for us. I would like to assure you that we will continue to work purposefully to further strengthen the potential and influence of the fund. Over the past years, your meetings have established themselves as a unique platform that unites all those involved in the multinational and multi-confessional Russian world. Prominent public and political figures, scientists, teachers, Russian scientists, compatriots. We highly appreciate your contribution to the promotion of the richest cultural and historical heritage of our motherland, in the development of international humanitarian cooperation. The most important factor of our common self-consciousness and, of course, remains the Russian language. And this year, we celebrated the 225th anniversary of the birth of Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin, whose work laid the foundation of the modern literary language. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for holding numerous bright and significant events both in our country and abroad, which were dedicated to the life and work of the great poet. And in general, thank you for your efforts to increase the interest in learning Russian in the world. Elena Alexandrovna has already said this in the President's message, saying that the topic of the current assembly is more relevant than ever, the spiritual and moral values of the Russian world. It is of particular importance in the context of the family being held in our country now, at this time of the year. Representatives of all peoples and faiths of Russia share love for their country, respect for centuries-old customs, reverence for the older generation, education of young people in the spirit of continuity, and other values. There is no doubt about it. And in general, all normal people understand that a departure from the basic norms of morality, permissiveness, brought to the point of absurdity, the so-called tolerance, is dangerous for the moral health of society. And we will preserve our traditional values, protect the cultural and historical heritage of the multinational people of the Russian Federation. This task is clearly reconfirmed in the new foreign policy concept, which the President approved in March this year, and which defines Russia as an original state, a civilization with more than 1,000 years of history. What can the voluntary rejection of the spiritual and cultural roots bequeathed by the ancestors, the situation in Ukraine, lead to? After the bloody coup d'état in the 2014 year, the neo-Nazi Kiev regime began the systematic extermination of everything connected with the Russian world. Russians, Russian-speaking people, just people who are involved in Russian culture, were under attack. With the connivance of the collective West, the UN Charter has been grossly violated, in the very first article of which all states are required to respect the rights and fundamental freedoms of any person, regardless of race, gender, language, and religion. Russian is legally prohibited in Ukraine in all spheres, from education, mass media, to everyday life. And at the end of September, another law was adopted, banning the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And the West is not just silent. The West loudly declares its support for Ukraine, which, I quote, protects European values. In other words, the West likes it all. And parallels involuntarily come to mind. Right now, the West, most of the Western countries, have come together in such a coalition for the sake of supporting Ukraine to the bitter end in order to supply it with weapons, mercenaries, instructors, inflict a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield. This is the official goal that they proclaim. But this has happened more than once in history. Most European countries were also represented in Napoleon's army. Most European countries were also represented in Hitler's army. Both of them also wanted, although then, maybe they did not know such terms. They also wanted to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield. We know very well how it ended, and we are sure that this will also be the fate of the current crusade against our country and our people. I would like to emphasize that ensuring the rights, freedoms, and legitimate interests of Russians and Russian speakers should be an integral element of the political settlement of the conflict in Ukraine, along with ensuring its non-aligned, neutral, and nuclear-free status, along with eliminating any threats to Russia's security on its territory. Of course, the recognition of the realities on Earth is of fundamental importance, as our President has repeatedly said. The longer the current Ukrainian leadership, with the support of the West, breaks agreements one after another, the less territory this regime has left. February 2000 of the 14th year. If we had honestly fulfilled what we agreed on, nothing would have happened, and Crimea would have been part of Ukraine. But they decided to break the agreement because they were impatient to change power as soon as possible. February 2015, Minsk Agreements. If they had honestly fulfilled these agreements, Crimea had already left by that time, but Ukraine would have remained within its borders, including the entire Donbass. They didn't want to, because they did not want to grant a special status to a part of Donbass, which consists primarily in confirming the right of people living there to speak their own language. And all this was broken, as Merkel or other signatories of the Minsk agreements proudly declared later, that no one was going to fulfill anything. It took time for Ukraine to pump up weapons. But they also had a third chance in Istanbul in February and April 2022 year. The President spoke about this in detail, speaking at a press conference in Kazan after the BRICS summit. And of course, the current realities are also different from those that were in April 2022 year. Therefore, not only is this regime not only Russophobic, but also not very smart, I would say so. And those who manage and direct it can hardly claim to be reasonable and far-sighted politicians either. Dear friends, our chosen line of creation and unification enjoys the widest support in the world. Even in the states that are taking unfriendly actions against Russia, there are many who sympathize in our country. We know this, we value it. That is why on August 19th of this year, President Putin signed a decree on providing humanitarian support to people who share traditional Russian spiritual values. Its implementation opens up the possibility for residents of countries where destructive values are imposed to move to Russia. Next year will be marked by the celebration of the anniversary of victory in the Great Patriotic War and World War II. The heroism of the soldiers of the Red Army officers, the home front workers who brought victory closer, serves as the most important pillar of our national identity, a source of inspiration for educating the younger generations in the spirit of patriotism. And we see how this legacy is now being adopted and brought to life by the heroes of a special military operation. In the West, the effect of the vaccine against the Nazi virus has already been seriously weakened, and the misanthropic ideology is now being used in the guise of not only neo-Nazism, but also Russophobia. In a hybrid war against Russia and the entire Russian language, culture, media, religion. In these truly dramatic conditions, it is extremely important to celebrate the upcoming anniversary at the highest, decent level. To honor veterans living abroad in Russia, to hold commemorative events and other events dedicated to the great victory and its illustrious heroes. After all, it is largely thanks to their unparalleled exploits that Russia is developing today as an independent, free, open country to the world. Together with like-minded people, we will continue to work on the formation of a more just multipolar world order that takes into account the civilizational diversity of the modern world. We will continue to implement an independent foreign policy course, increase mutually beneficial cooperation with all those who are willing to work on the basis of equality, trust, and an honest balance of interests, and thereby contribute to maintaining an atmosphere of mutual understanding between peoples. In this, of course, there is a role for each of you. I would like to wish you successful work and all the very best. Thank you.